Huna, Washington has been covering a region where a ceasefire is technically in effect, and everyone is 1 hour from an airstrike, which is a very specific kind of peace.
That tension runs through everything Huna, Washington published this week, from the Iran nuclear standoff and Gulf diplomacy, to Lebanon's fragile truce, to intelligence operations, and a genuinely eclectic mix of culture and oddities. Let's start with the pressure campaign on Tehran.
The core question here is whether Washington and Tehran are negotiating or just taking turns threatening each other. And the answer, apparently, is both simultaneously.
Trump put it plainly at a White House event. His words, "Negotiating with a country that is badly beaten makes them come to the table and beg for a deal." But he left the military option open, saying, "I hope you don't have to go to war again, but you may have to hit them again very hard."
1 hour. That's how close he said he was to ordering a new strike before pulling back. Gulf leaders from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE asked him to wait, and he did, framing it as respect for their request.
The Pakistani-mediated track is still moving. Iran's deputy foreign minister disclosed the revised proposal: lifting sanctions, releasing frozen assets, ending the naval blockade, halting combat on all fronts, including Lebanon, and U.S. troop withdrawal from areas near Iran. Washington hasn't confirmed the terms.
Meanwhile, Iran's president made what the Post covering his remarks calls a rare and unprecedented admission that the naval blockade has shut oil exports completely.
Pezeshkian said the route to exporting oil has been completely closed, and that Iran faces serious difficulty maintaining its gasoline production capacity. Satellite imagery confirms it. Roughly 23 tankers were clustered near Harg Island in mid-May, compared to 4 in mid-April.
So the economic squeeze is real, and Tehran's response to that squeeze is apparently to arm the street and run military drills for children on live television.
The post on Tehran's street mobilization describes besieged forces demonstrating weapons assembly and disassembly in front of women and children. Nobel laureate Shireen Ebadi compared the scenes to child soldier recruitment in African conflict zones. The regime is framing it as national readiness culture. On the power structure itself, a separate post maps who actually runs Iran now, a tight circle called the Brotherhood, veterans of the Iran-Iraq War, led by Mojtaba Khamenei, with figures like IRGC commander Ahmed Vahidi and Judiciary Chief Gholam Hussein Mohseni Aji holding the real levers.
And on the covert pressure side, U.S. authorities arrested Mohammed Bakir al-Sadi, an Iraqi commander linked to Kataib Hezbollah, in Manhattan, accused of coordinating roughly 20 attacks abroad and plotting against Jewish sites in New York, California, and Arizona.
FBI Director Kash Patel called him a top priority target because the plots had moved beyond planning into active execution. The case involved encrypted cryptocurrency financing and direct coordination with IRGC elements.
And then there's the footballer. Iran arrested former national goalkeeper Mohammad Rashid Mozahiri, officially for attempting an illegal border crossing, but his wife says it was because of an Instagram post calling the late supreme leader a dark and passing chapter.
That's the pattern a post on Iranian sports and politics lays out. Asset seizures against Ali Karimi, the 2022 arrest of Faryad Ghafouri, repeated summons of players over political statements. The Post notes that athletes, because of their public reach, have become priority targets for the security apparatus.
The window for a deal is narrow. The blockade is biting, and the backup plan is a second strike. And let's turn to Lebanon, where a different kind of fragile arrangement is being tested. The Lebanon-Israel file is about whether a 45-day ceasefire extension can be turned into something durable, or whether it collapses first.
The U.S. State Department announced the extension after a third round of talks in Washington, describing the sessions as productive. The spokesperson said the goal is lasting peace between the two countries and full recognition of each party's sovereignty and territorial integrity. A political track resumes June 2nd. A military session at the Pentagon is set for May 29th.
The Lebanese embassy called it tangible diplomatic progress. The Lebanese army still has around 7,000 troops south of the Litani. More than 25 villages were completely destroyed. 65 more towns cannot receive returning residents.
A Lebanese military source quoted in the Pentagon meeting post was direct. Israel's demand for Hezbollah disarmament before any firm ceasefire commitment is, in his words, unrealistic. He also noted that what's happening now is fire control, not an actual ceasefire, and that stabilization efforts have actually regressed in recent days.
Hezbollah is still firing. Israel is still running daily evacuation warnings for southern Lebanese villages. The death toll since March stands at 2,951 killed and nearly 9,000 wounded.
The U.S. sanctions package announced this week adds another layer. Treasury designated 9 individuals, including Lebanese parliamentarians Ibrahim Moussaoui and Hassan Fadlallah, former ministers, an Iranian diplomat, and business figures, for facilitating Hezbollah and undermining Lebanese sovereignty. A $10 million reward was announced for information disrupting Hezbollah financing.
Treasury spokesperson Tommy Pigott said Hezbollah's continued support for terrorism and refusal to disarm prevents the Lebanese government from achieving the peace, stability, and prosperity its people deserve. The sanctions are also clearly timed to shape the political landscape ahead of any permanent agreement.
The hacking of former Lebanese General Security Chief Abbas Ibrahim's accounts adds a murkier dimension. Leaked material, disputed narratives about forged passports issued to Iranian nationals, and political figures using the breach to relitigate old scores. The investigations are ongoing. Qatar's condemnation of the drone strikes near the Baraka nuclear facility in the UAE, drones traced to Iraqi territory, shows how far the regional spillover extends. Doha called it a flagrant violation of international law and warned that repeated attacks had crossed all red lines.
From Lebanon's ruins to Istanbul's back streets, the intelligence operations keep running. Turkey has had a busy month in the counterintelligence business. 2 major drug network arrests and a spy ring dismantled, all in the same few weeks.
Turkish intelligence, working with Istanbul narcotics and intelligence units, arrested a suspect identified only as FB in the Şişli district, wanted by German authorities for running a cross-border drug operation using encrypted messaging apps. The arrest came days after the takedown of Moroccan national Mohamed Boulkrif, known in media as the Moroccan drug emperor, in the same neighborhood.
And separately, Turkish intelligence announced the dismantling of a 9-person spy network operating across 4 provinces, collecting data on civil society organizations, ethnic groups, and senior officials, with communications routed through encrypted channels to 2 different foreign intelligence services.
On the defense posture side, the Pentagon announced it is reducing U.S. combat brigades in Europe from 4 to 3, returning to 2021 levels. The official statement said the final disposition of forces will be determined based on further analysis of U.S. strategic and operational requirements and European allies' capacity to contribute. The deployment to Poland was described as delayed, not canceled.
The Virginia redistricting case rounds out the theme. Democrats tried to replace the congressional map before the 2026 elections. The state Supreme Court blocked it on procedural grounds, and the U.S. Supreme Court declined to intervene. Virginia's 11 House seats stay on the old map, 6 Democratic, 5 Republican.
The Post frames it as a case where a procedural flaw, starting the constitutional amendment process after early voting had already begun, proved fatal to the entire effort. The Supreme Court's silence carried its own message.
From shadow wars to stranger waters, the culture segment awaits. This segment contains horoscopes, a shark, a French presidential slap, and the FBI's alien mail, which is either a very slow news week or a very full one.
The horoscope post for May 17th frames the day's planetary energy as one of renewed vitality in work and relationships, with a summary that the cosmic atmosphere leans toward relative stability, with opportunities for renewal in relationships and work, provided each sign maintains calm and flexibility.
Scorpio was told the day's key is self-confidence. Capricorn was told not to be overconfident. The stars are covering their bases.
Moving to more verifiable events. 2 EA-18G electronic warfare jets collided mid-air during an air show at Mountain Home Air Force Base in Idaho. All crew members ejected and survived. Witnesses described it as a miracle given the low altitude and speed of the maneuver. No detailed official statement on cause had been issued at time of publication. American Airlines extended its suspension of direct New York to Tel Aviv flights through January 2027, joined by United and Delta. The Post notes this is the longest such suspension in the history of U.S.-Israel aviation, driven by ongoing missile and drone threats over the region.
The Brigitte Macron story resurfaced. A journalist claims the famous slap during a Vietnam landing wasn't a joke between spouses, but a reaction to discovering messages between Macron and Iranian-French actress Golshifteh Farahani. The Elysee called it a playful moment. Macron's inner circle denies the new version. Trump used it to call Macron's wife very mean to him.
The FBI files release included a 1955 memo documenting an interview with members of the Detroit Flying Saucer Club, who reported receiving messages from extraterrestrial beings warning that Earth's population holds a low standing in the cosmos, and that all planets except Earth have been conquered. Investigators were checking whether any of this posed a national security threat.
A 70-year-old question. Still open.
Egyptian actor Hani Ramsey announced a sequel to his 2004 comedy Stupid from Him and In Him, with a new script by 2 young writers and a promise of a completely different premise. The character Sultan returns, but the plot won't be a direct continuation given the passing of several original cast members. A French court sentenced Moroccan singer Saad Lamjarid to 5 years in prison for rape, with 30,000 euros in compensation to the plaintiff. The Post notes this is the latest in a pattern of legal cases against him across 3 countries, and raises broader questions about accountability and the limits of celebrity.
Radio Caroline in the UK accidentally broadcast a death announcement for King Charles III. A technical glitch triggered a protocol kept on standby for that exact purpose. The station apologized on air and on social media. The king was in Northern Ireland at the time, reportedly in good health.
A post on the Andalusian sailor Kashkash ibn Said revisits a 9th century account of a mariner from Cordoba who sailed west into the Atlantic and returned with treasures, raising the perennial question of whether Muslims reached the Americas 6 centuries before Columbus. The historian al-Masudi documented it. The archaeological evidence remains absent.
And a retired U.S. general appeared on Fox News to discuss Iran. And the internet decided the lighting around his neck proved he was wearing a human mask. He was not. He's nearly 70, and the studio lights were bright.
The post on General Robert Harward's appearance notes that what the clips actually showed was shadow and skin tone under strong lighting. But it spread anyway, as a case study in how visual ambiguity feeds conspiracy cycles in a high-speed media environment.
The Ottoman Prince Mustafa's execution in 1553 got its own deep dive. How a forged letter, a jealous stepmother, and a sultan's fear of his own son combined to eliminate the most capable heir and begin the empire's long decline. History's version of a palace leak that went very wrong.
And a murder in Zaleh, Lebanon. A woman killed by a former partner after she ended the relationship. The Post connects it to a broader pattern of rising domestic and intimate partner violence in Lebanon amid economic and social pressures that authorities have not adequately addressed.
The through line this week is negotiations happening in parallel with preparations for when negotiations fail. In Tehran, in Beirut, in Islamabad.
And the domestic pressure inside Iran, the economic blockade, the arrested goalkeeper, the children learning to disassemble rifles, suggests the internal costs are becoming harder to absorb quietly.
Next week, either a deal or a very different kind of episode. We'll see which.